Hey guys, Dark Humility here. You can always catch me at twitch.tv/Dark Humility for 6 to 7 days a week of Diablo 2 action. Of course, D2R and PD2, mostly hardcore online, but we do it all kinds of builds. Of course, you can always catch my other build guides for D2R and PD2 on YouTube, and the most brilliant written D2R guides on maxroll.gg/D2. Today we have the most interesting, the most incredible Corpse Explosion Mercenary Necromancer, or Merc CE Necromancer. This is a very unique Necromancer build because it truly takes advantage of the power of Corpse Explosion by simply only using Corpse Explosion for the most part, and the power of the Mercenary. By doing so, it can stack billions and billions of MF. Just stack as much MF as you could possibly want. Of course, the actual gear we're going to showcase here today is from my completed Grail on LOD. So I imported some items over here for us to do this today, so you can check it out. Of course, also has a ton of other fun stuff as well. But anyway, he is a beast. He is a monster. Let's check out the Merc CE Necro. So first we'll go over the stats, the skills, the gear, and then we will do some farming demos. He is meant for purely solo gameplay. He's the king of magic find. If you ever want to elite target effectively on a Necromancer, this is the way to do it. Terror zones, high level areas, it's time to smash. Alright guys, let's get into it. Let's get into the meat of it. This is a level 95 Necromancer named Submerge. For strength, you just put enough into wear your gear. You don't put any points into dex unless you're going max block with Homunculus, which would be a more hardcore approach. And then you would go the rest into vitality. Resistances, pretty much just as much resistances as you can possibly get. Players 1, it's not insanely important in Hell that you have max resistances across the board, but we have some pretty good ones here because we have some pretty good charms. Next up, damage reduction definitely helps you survive on this build, but not super necessary. You will have some meat shields. This is the most important stat. This is a stat that might surprise you guys. It is true that MF does have diminishing returns, but the difference between 400 and 756 MF is still pretty massive. Of course, the difference means less and less the higher the MF goes. Once you get to around 300 MF, more MF beyond that definitely starts to encounter some pretty severe diminishing returns. That's not to say that more MF isn't always better. More MF will always lead to you finding unique items more often. The way the game works is that the game will check for your magic find when an item drops, and will attempt to roll unique first, and then set, and then rare, and then blue. So magic find is very, very important, no matter what. No matter what. Of course, always a good stuff, always very good stuff there. But like, yeah, you can see it's a pretty crazy amount. Don't necessarily need this much. You can actually get even more than this on this build. Heck, you could even get more on the Mercenary as well, and you can stack your Mercenary, and your Mercenary can also help you magic find. But for the most part, this is how it goes on this particular build. You just want tons of magic find. Life after each kill is nice, but that's just going to be for Enigma. It's going to be nice for some sustain. Definitely going to need Enigma on this build, but we'll go over that when we go over the gear. Faster cast rate, you want to hit either the 75 or 125 faster cast rate breakpoints. We'll show it with the slower version with more MF and the faster version with about 100 to 150 less MF. And we'll show both of them off so you guys can kind of see for yourself how they operate. Now you might notice there are some stats missing here, like faster hit recovery, which is not essential in this build necessarily, but you can get it. Not super important, especially if you're using this build properly and farming solo. Of course, I also plan to show you guys some players 3 as well in his optimal farming areas. So that's pretty much it. Damage is pretty much just Corpse Explosion and the Mercenary, and some supplementary damage from the skeletons. So there's no damage that's actually going to show up in the character screen on this particular character, which is a little amusing. So you don't really know how much damage you do, but hey, that's okay. You can always use the D2 planner on Maxroll to calculate it if you really wanted to. Always a fun time. Alright, and then of course, let's go into skills. So yeah, plus skills do help, but once again, not insanely essential. The first thing, of course, to know is you're going to want to max Corpse Explosion. Makes sense. Of course, it doesn't raise its damage, it increases its radius, which will help you blow up more monsters per Corpse Explosion, which is just nice quality of life. Also going to want to max Skeleton Mastery and raise Skeleton. Now, you don't have to do this, and you can purely rely on revives. Maybe you could even go pure Bone Armors to have a ridiculous high Bone Armor, along with Bone Prison, Bone Wall. And you can even put all your points in Amplified Damage for more radius on that, or you can even make your Iron Golem even tankier with Golem Mastery. But it is nice to have decently strong skeletons, so these skeletons aren't going to be the bulk of your damage, but they will be doing a decent amount of damage. So that is nice. It will definitely provide you with some extra damage, so that doesn't hurt. This build does not rely on ultra powerful skeletons though. You're not using beasts, you're not using any extra auras as you might on a normal summon Necromancer. You don't need much for this magic find oriented Necromancer to work. The 1-point revive can just provide you with extra revives if you want them. You don't even really have to get that. I mean, there's a lot of things that are kind of optional. I do recommend putting extra points in a Golem Mastery though, so that your Iron Golem can survive. Around 5,000 life is pretty nice. That way you don't have to constantly recreate him by throwing new Insight Rune Words on the ground. He is created from an Insight Rune Word. And he's going to provide us some meditation, which is going to allow us to have that mana sustain, which is very important. Or not chugging billions of potions and struggling. Alright. And then we have... Yeah, I mean, pretty much it. I mean, you get one in Summon Resist, which helps the Golem mainly, and the Skeletons to some extent. And put a lot of points in a Bone Prison just to make the Bone Armor stronger, while also having an option of providing some extra CC, just in case we're in danger. Which is really nice. And the monsters will also attack that. Some extra points in Amplified Damage to increase the radius of this curse. It does have a pretty small radius, so making it a lot larger is kind of nice as well. So you definitely have a lot of options as to where to put points in this build, because once again, your main damage is literally just this, which putting extra points into it doesn't even give you extra damage. It already does 1 billion damage. This skill is the strongest Necromancer skill, and it is one of the strongest skills in the game. It can truly stand alone on this build, and you really don't need much to make it work whatsoever. So, yeah. Pretty crazy stuff. One thing to mention, of course, about this build, before we get into the Mercenary gear and my own gear, is that it is a build that requires high mobility and high magic find. This, in order to truly be effective at anything. And so it is not an early game starter build. Early game starter builds, you're going to have to rely more on damage skills, like your skeletons, your Bone Spear, or Poison Nova, in addition to the Amplify Damage, Corpse Explosion, Mercenary approach. Of course, this build also requires an insanely high damage Mercenary. Of course, you can use slightly weaker weapons in this, like Obedience, but that's about it. Speaking of the Mercenary, we may as well get into him now. Mercenary is Might Aura. That should be pretty self-explanatory. You're going to be relying on your Mercenary to get that first kill to start that corpse explosion chain. So you're going to want as much damage on him as possible. Idor is the way to do that. Of course, the Mercenary jab attack is also incredibly reactive and reliable when it comes to teleporting into packs, and will kill the monsters incredibly quickly. This isn't the best roll in this item, but this is the ideal weapon. You want the highest damage weapon possible on a Mercenary on this build, so that he one-shots most monsters and you can corpse explode immediately and move on to the next pack. Of course, this also gives him tons of other very useful stats and makes him attack very fast as well. First, the Life Leech. Life Leech, just a lot of stats, really good stuff, just incredibly high damage. Along with that, of course, you're going to use the damage armor, Fortitude. This is a very nice Fortitude. Doesn't have to be this nice, but Fortitude nonetheless is an extremely solid choice. Of course, you can also use the G-Face, the Guillaume's Face. Very cool item indeed. I like it quite a bit. It's nice. It's solid. It works. G-Face, of course, providing that deadly strike and crushing blow, which just further increases his damage and getting him above the next attack speed breakpoint with an attack speed jewel with an even more enhanced damage. You might notice here that his damage says he's doing almost 12,000 damage. Matter of fact, with a better rolled Breath of the Dying, he can do probably around 13,000, 14,000 damage. That is not a bug. That is actually how much damage he does. It's very, very important he does that much damage because he is the only way, pretty much, besides some weak-ass skeletons, that we're going to be able to get any corpses. And there you have it. Lots of res. I wouldn't say they're that weak, to be fair, but yeah, they're kind of weak, to be fair. So he's just massive, massive damage. Now, of course, if you didn't want quite as much damage and maybe you're only killing lower HP monsters with less physical resistance, you could even put Magic Find on him. And when he kills a monster specifically, you could get over like 1,000 MF doing that. So that's actually kind of interesting. Just an interesting tidbit there about something that is possible. Very, very cool. Alright, anyway, cool stuff. Alright, and so we have that, and now let's go over his actual gear. So Act 2 Mercenary with Might, tons of damage, pretty straightforward honestly. I mean, you just max damage on the Mercenary, have almost no damage on yourself, get high faster cast rate breakpoint, and just stack MF to the moon. So here we have 6-isted sword. That's the most MF you can get on a weapon, so it makes sense. Of course, you don't necessarily need anything this crazy. You can use like a 2-isted Alibaba and have a very similar effect, but you know, maxing that MF sometimes requires really nice items. Of course, you can use other things that are, you know, also giving you MF as well. You could even use like an isted Wizard Spike if you wanted to, which is an option for getting a lot more res, and also getting some MF and getting more FCR. So there's just a lot of things you can do, but you know, those are the overall goals of the build. You know, we pretty much mentioned them a second ago. Enigma, you're not going to get anything better than Enigma on this build. I would almost say this is required on this build because without it, kind of a fish out of water. You're moving slowly, your Mercenary is moving slowly, you can't tele-stomp with your Mercenary, which is something you need to do. You could use a staff to do that, but it's incredibly inefficient on this particular setup. So, once again, I really do consider this build to be truly late game. It's when you get these really nice items and you don't need any other skills on the Necromancer, and you can just stack that MF once again. Shaco. Very good option. You're going to want a lot of MF on your helm no matter what. Now, when we do the 125 faster cast rate version, you'll see here we have a 20 FCR Diadem, 35 FCR Spirit, and those are going to help us hit that breakpoint. This also gives us some MF as well, and the plus skills also do help a little bit. Of course, you could technically get a helmet upwards of 85 MF along with 20 FCR, so this is definitely in no means the best version of this, but it's a pretty solid item nonetheless. You can also get like a 20 FCR 3-socketed helm. If you have your FCR elsewhere, or if you don't want the other nice quality of life stats on Shaco, you could even use like a Artisan's Tiara of Luck, which is just a blue tiara with 3 sockets and really high magic find on top of that. You can get like a helm with like 115 F as well. Sky truly is the limit to some degree here. And then of course we have this. This helps us reach our FCR breakpoint and gives us res. Ideally it would also have magic find, but I don't have one to show you from any of my personal solo self-found items from either one of the grails, the D2R or the LOD grail, so I don't have anything to show you there, but ideally you'd actually have even more magic find there, because why not? And of course if you have FCR elsewhere, you could even just get like a 50 MF amulet. That's possible. 100 MF shield. Well, if you need your FCR, you got your spirit. Otherwise, 100 MF shield. You can also have a 2-isted Mosers, which can help you achieve maximum block. You know, and of course homunculus for hardcore will be nice, but there's all kinds of things you could put in the homunculus, including a shale, an ist, and whatever kind of stats you're lacking. If you feel like you're dying too much, maybe you want that rune. It just depends. Alright, so CTA, Spirit. These are very good CTA'd Spirit. Pretty straightforward. Almost every build uses those. Battle orders and battle command are incredible. Not just for yourself, but for your minions. Ward Traveler. Highest MF boots. If you're lacking res though, try res. MF boots are very nice. Rare boots are very tasty. Mage Fist, I consider this usually best in slot, but if you feel like you're just overstacked in FCR elsewhere, maybe you're using the Wizard Spike, maybe you're even using a Hodo. I don't really advise using a Hodo on this build because there's no way to get a magic find on it, and you don't really need the plus skills. I mean, you might feel like you're lacking res sometimes, but I don't really advise that. I don't know. Either way, you'd use either one of those. Don't really advise the Hodo. But Mage Fist also gives you, if you guys don't know, a fire skill. Technically, Corpse Explosion's half fire, half physical, which is really nice. So you actually get some hybrid damage. Of course, the amplified damage will just make the physical portion of Corpse Explosion go out of control, in addition to the jab attack on the Mercenary, lowering physical resistance by 100. So, got a lot of good sources of damage. On top of that, which we don't have here to demo here on my grail here, but you can also use Bone Break, which is the new center charm, which can allow you to absolutely destroy physical immunes, because you'll get the full impact of amplified damage instead of just 1/5 of it after breaking the physical immunity with Bone Break. So yeah, you can farm whatever you want with this character. Terror zones, doesn't really matter. You can do whatever you desire. Plenty of defensive options you can use as well, including the new helms. But since this is a late game build, don't really need to talk about the patch 2.6 or it's too much in regards to this particular build. But there's, you know, you can always use some of the Sorb helms if you're feeling like you just really want to farm Trav or, you know, World of Stone Keep and don't want to wear T-Guns. But once again, those helms don't have magic finds, so that's going to severely weaken the effectiveness of this build. Of course, we have Magic Find and FCR. That's what's going to help us get to 75 faster cast rate, which is the minimum breakpoint I advise on this build. Also on Arachnid's Mesh, 20 FCR. That FCR is pretty easy to hit with these items here. Of course, if you're hitting more FCR elsewhere, I don't really recommend using skill rings because once again, the plus skills on your actual build aren't important. Most of your damage is Corpse Explosion, which doesn't... The only thing plus skills do for it is radius. Same thing with amplify damage, it's just radius. And of course, the Mercenary is where you really want the damage. So ideally, we would have just rolled a, Breath of the Dying with 43% more enhanced damage. or even higher if we had a one with a starting base ED as well. So like, lots of good options there. But despite that, solid. I think you guys get the idea though. There's definitely a lot of good options for this build, and I think I've gone over the kinds of stats you want on this build quite a few times. You want got a perfect Necro Torch and a perfect Annie, which is really sick. And those off of the original Pluggy. You know, the declone's pretty easy to get on that though, so it's not the same as here. Of course, you have some MF and Res. Boom. Once again, no faster hit recovery. It's all. If you're farming areas without physical amines, which is ideal on this build, you wouldn't use Bone Break anyway. But if you wanna, if there's like a terror zone, and you have this build and you want to farm it, Bone Break is the way to go. You'd add that on top of this build and Shazam, cha-ching. Alright, anyway. Of course, we got a perfect MF Geeds. So, Geeds being best in slot. No plus skills GCs. Once again, this is definitely a build that doesn't need it. This isn't a magic find. This is one of the best magic find stacking builds, relying on just how ridiculously strong amplified damage, corpse explosion, and the mercenary can be used in tandem. This is the perfect trifecta of pain. Alright, so without further ado, we are going to get into the demos. So, let's demo what is arguably his strongest farming spot, the pit, first. I'm going to do 75 faster cast rate on a few areas that maybe don't require quite as much travel. And then we will show you guys the 125 FCR version. I personally kind of like the 125 CR version, but it requires a rare circlet and somewhat more specialized gear. And you do have to lower the MF quite a bit, so it's kind of arguable which one you would even consider to be the standard version of this build. I consider them both to be effective, it just depends on what you're farming. Alright, here we go. So what do you do in the beginning before you farm? You bow. We already made the Iron Golem out of the Insight. That step has been completed for us by myself before I made this video. The Bone Armor, Bone Prison, which you can use anytime. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to seek out Elite Packs. Elite Packs and their minions not only give good experience, which doesn't matter really in Players 1. Experience isn't very great anyway, but you'll get some experience at targeting elites. It's the loot tables you want off of the minions and elites, which are superior. And in terror zones, you get really high level monsters, which means they can drop anything, even the surrounding monsters. So this is an elite here. There you have it. Just go into an elite pack. Boom. Now notice that I don't even have my summons at the moment. What I'd actually advise you do... Oh, sorry. Wrong hockey. I'm used to playing a different build. Alright, I'm used to playing my poison out there. I've been playing it recently. Alright. So as you can see, you don't need anything on this build except for this. This is all you need. It's a ton of MF, mobility, your trusty Iron Golem, and your very trusty Mercenary. Look how easy that was. In Players 1, the reason why you do Players 1 is because elites always drop a magic item or higher, and their chance to drop a better... You don't get a better chance to drop a better item at all by having higher player count from the elite itself. It always drops the item, player count doesn't affect it. Now it does affect the minion chance, so going up to player 3 could be quite beneficial, which is something I do want to show. Of course, I'm going to show a couple of areas real quick here without my army, just to show you guys that this build really doesn't need anything. It's incredible how much MF you can stack on a Necromancer just simply because you don't need plus skills. It really functions really well. The Summon Necromancer doesn't really live by that creed. The Summon Necromancer can be very effective at high player count. And if you stack a lot of plus skills, your skeletons and whatnot will be extremely powerful. And you can make your Corpse Explosion more powerful using Infinity on the Mercenary on the Summoner. And that's kind of one of the main comparisons. And of course, because you use things like Beast and plus skills, you're not going to be able to stack as much Magic Fund. But it is a lot more effective in higher player count. So if you want to play more party play, that's what you're going to want to do. Now notice here, this build here is a beast. That's all you need, just amplify damage, tele-stomp the elite pack, just jump right in. The water's fun. Go right in. Go into however many monsters you want. Now, that's not an elite pack, so don't do that. That's just going to be inefficient. And so you don't want to do that, but that's okay. Now, a lot of people probably thought the Necromancer has a lot of difficulty stacking Magic Fund. Well, on a lot of builds, I'd say like the Summoner and the Poison Necromancer, usually they can top out around maybe 600 MF, you know, maybe 400 with a very strong version of the build. This one can go, I mean, this is 750, but with better MF on more items, like, you really could hit some pretty absurd numbers, far over 800, 900, and with the Mercenary stacking MF, well, you know, sky is truly the limit. Truly. Boom. There you have it. Crushed it. See how easy that was? Not hard at all.
Afternoon.
So Nilfok, Ancient Tunnels, Pit, all very strong areas, and they're all very classic areas as well. What I will do here is I'll show you guys that the army can accomplish. Show you guys a bit of a difference here. Look how strong the Mercenary is. I don't even know why I'm using Bone Prison so much. I keep pressing the button on accident. Alright, it's okay. But notice that they're worried about dying. That Bone Prison is pretty nice, actually. It's pretty sick. Okay, so there's a lot of other really nice areas where you can just target elite packs. Of course, Terrazins would be amazing for that as well. Let's go reload the game, though. And go show them off in a different scenario. So let's gather some skeletons and to show you how the skeletons do provide a decent amount of supplementary damage. But notice, you don't really need it. If you want to be lazy and efficient, you just want to complete runs as fast as possible, you don't necessarily even need some of this, but you have them. Protect into them. You gotta spend your points on this build somehow. That's the way I see it. I think we have... yeah. Get some revives too, and there you have it. We have a bit of an army going. You get more revives if we want, but you can see now, we're kind of like a baby Summon-mancer, and look just how destructive this build is. And now, of course, it's feeling a bit smoother, as it should. Skeletons do provide some extra damage. Oh god. Gotta watch that. Good thing we have all these meat shields because that was a pretty dangerous pack right there. How to use a juve. Yikes. Of course, against... I don't really advise Chaos because you can't find any item in the game from... Well, one, he's really shitty at killing bosses, so like Diablo is just really bad. There's also a lot of fire immunes in there, which means Corpse Explosion will be a little less effective. Also a decent amount of physical immunes from Stone Skin Elites in there on top of that, making your physical damage less effective unless you have Bone Break. And then, of course, high HP monsters and the super uniques cannot drop any items, so Infector, Vizier, and things of that nature. However, one of the endgame areas that you can definitely farm very well could be the World Stone. The World Stone. The World Stone. But notice in P1, he really has no problems at all. You really don't need anything fancy to do this. We have all SMFs, so we're magic finding extremely efficiently. We might find something crazy doing all these demos. I don't know. That would be the hope. Now, if only we have the Sunder Charm. This is where the Sunder Charm would be really good. But you see in P1, we can actually still kill them. Despite not having the Sunder Charm. That one might be tough, though. Might do damage to me a little too quickly. Yeah, so like if you're in World Stone Keep, you might want the Sunder Charm on hand. The Bone Break Charm. Most of your damage is physical. You got that half fire from the Close Explosion, huh? Just targeting those champions, targeting those special named monsters. One thing we could do, though, is we could actually take on this mob here using our Bone Wizardry. There you have it. There you go, there we found a Shadow Pillar. Didn't take long to find a at least interesting unique, at the very least. Okay. And dolls. Very dangerous. But we do have Bone Armor. Bone Armor blocks physical damage. Doesn't block elemental damage, so it will protect us from the dolls pretty decently. That's why putting more points into Bone Armor can be nice, especially if I was farming Goldstone Keep, I'd probably invest a lot more into Bone Armor if I was like only farming Goldstone. For the most part, though, doesn't seem to matter too much. Alright. Beautiful. Remember, check those elite packs. See, that guy's name is Dreadkiller. Yeah. Mercenary just does so much damage. Now, those guys, we would absolutely need Bone Break for. They're so physical resistant, even with aim bomb. I think they got like still 90. It's like 99% still, or like 98% or something. It's pretty ridiculous. Not gonna mess around with those though. It's okay. Of course, in the actual written Maxroll guide, you can always check out the full information with all the build variants, including Hardcore and the Sunder Charm variant, which is towards the top, and see how other versions of this build can work as well. So as you can see, he's a beast. Crushes face. Of course, might not be too convinced yet. What about players 3? What if you want to get some items from the minions as well? Maybe some chance to find some runes, even though this is probably not the best rune finder in the universe. Wouldn't be terrible. Alright, so what you do now. One thing to note is, unlike most Necromancers, he's not really specialized for cows, you know. Once again, this is not a summon Necromancer. Alright, so we went to P3 there. P3 is really easy to do in areas like Ancient Tunnels and the Pit. Okay. As you can see, though, P3 is no problem. Yeah, and we're still finding lots of unique items, as we should be with our giant amount of magic find. Another unique item. Yeah, so I mean, we're gonna find GG stuff if we, you know, if you farm like a whole day with him, like 5 hours or something, he's gonna find griffins or something. It's gonna be pretty good. That's the idea, of course. All right, so I'm gonna farm a couple more areas here in P3, and then I'm actually gonna switch to the mobility setup so you guys can see a little bit of that. The mobility setup is just really, really cool. Very strong. Actually, let's do... with that one, I might do some other areas that maybe some of the same areas, but also some areas that require maybe a bit more travel. Oh wow, look at that. Notice some P3 though, it can take a little bit longer to get the corpse explosion chain going for sure. Of course, I didn't telly stomp perfectly there. See, ideally you jump directly into monsters. Directly. Directo mundo. Right into the monsters you go. Where is the Ancient Tunnels in this one? Hello? It's always somewhere. Oh yeah, that's right. I already know where it is on this map. What am I doing? Okay, I guess I wasn't paying attention. Focusing on other stuff. That's okay. That's right, single player. Duh! The maps don't change. Used to online too much. I haven't played enough single player in a while. Alright, here we go. Alright. Got that. So even in P3, it's pretty solid. The faster you get your Mercenary on top of a monster with amplified damage, they're golden. Ideally you want to cast Amp before you jump into the monsters, but you can also cast it afterwards. It kind of depends, but that is the ideal, of course. I mean, in some useful order, though, will be totally acceptable. Alright.
Good day.
And of course, next up here, we got another round of Worldstone Keep real quick, just to show you guys P3 Worldstone. It's a pretty hard area, so it's always fun to show off. Oh my god. Whoa! Okay, my Mercenary got totally vaporized there.
Afternoon.
Wow, that's impressive actually. 80% lightning resistance, and he just got melted. I actually don't know how he died actually. That's weird. I mean, I know souls can't do that. Wait, is that a conviction soul? Oh, that's why. Ugh. Well, that's gonna vaporize me too. I better not deal with that right now. I don't have my T-Gods and my Wisp, and I don't have stacked Latent Res. That's what you're gonna need for that. Yeah, let's not do that. That's wow. I'm fortunate enough to run into a Conviction Soul here. Definitely, always a lot of fun. Fun in parentheses. Or in quotations, I should say. Fun. Yes, fun. So yeah, in P3 we're still doing just fine. Still don't want to get blown up by dolls if we can avoid it. Oh my god. Oh man. So as you can see, this is not the hardcore version of the build. Oh man. No. Definitely gonna want more DR, max block. And on top of that, you're gonna want to be more careful around the balls, for sure. Absolutely. You can see though, these skeletons are pretty reliable. Good stuff, good stuff. Of course, in some cases, you don't even have to use the corpse explosion. You can just tele-stomp with Amp and the Mercenary. Even in P3. Once again, this is not a boss killer, so if you attempt to kill Bale or something with this, it's not going to go well for you. You can summon Revive Urdars, though. Let's say you get a declone in your game. You can amp declone, put a Durus on the Mercenary if you want for open wounds, and then you can just tele-stomp declone with a bunch of revived Urdars or Blunderboars, which you can find in River of Flame or Palace Cellar. So if you do run into a declone, you can still kill them with this character, no problem. It will take a little bit longer, but you can do it. It's not, in general, a boss killer, though, because that's like a whole process you'd have to go through. And that's just inefficient and frustrating. Alright, so all that, let's actually do a couple of demos using the super fast one, and then that will be it. Where's Deckard Cain? Oh yeah, I forgot they put... Why is Deckard Cain over here? Real questions. I'm asking the real questions here. I really am. Okay. Well, at any rate, let's go get the other setup. So this setup, we actually do need 2 strength to make it work. I also use FHR, so now we'll have more hit recovery, which is nice. So there's actually a couple of advantages to this build. The major advantage, of course, is the crazy faster cast rate, which, if you had like a 40 MF ring or something, and then you just put on a 210 amulet, you could actually take advantage of it even better in terms of min-maxing your magic find. Even with this, notice I'm still getting nearly 600 magic find. And with a good min-maxing, you can still get 650 to 700, no problem, on this particular setup. Maybe even higher than that. I don't remember, something like that. Alright, anyway, this setup is a lot of fun. So now we're moving, right? We're moving. We're boosting. But we are going to remake the game. We're actually going to go back into P1 for a bit, just to show you guys how fast this build can go. So if you're just targeting the unique monsters, which have the best odds of dropping items, this build is very fast. We get some skeletons, Summoning the skeletons is fast, everything is fast. The amp cast is very fast as well. Teleport around, cast the amplify damage, jump right in. Yeah, crazy speeds. And of course, casting of the corpse explosion is faster as well, not just your teleport speed. So this build in a lot of ways feels a lot smoother, but you definitely make sacrifices for it, so yeah, it's...
Yes?
You cannot argue whether the slight extra clunkiness is worth the extra MF, or of course if you have the more specialized gear like something like a 220 circlet, that will be required to use this particular setup. Of course we can show ancient tunnels if we want on P3. And we'll go back to P1 for like Stony Tomb and maybe World Stone here. And I think after we do all that, it's pretty convincing, right? Pretty convincing stuff. Okay. One thing to note is I didn't even summon all of my skeletons. So once again, you really don't need to do that. It's kind of an optional step. Looks like with this setup, we can get 13 skeletons. Nice. Who would have thunk it? Now, you might notice my amp radius is pretty high, but you could make it higher once again by leveling up amp a bit more. I think it's pretty solid though. I mean, it's going to cover most elite packs the vast majority of the time. Go out to Stony Tomb here though. Skeletons can actually do some damage, whereas the revives don't really, so... Oops. Remember, if you really run into a pinch, you can always use Bone Prison. You'll notice in most cases, I cast Corpse Explosion like once or twice, and everything blows up. Pretty straightforward. Alright, that's an elite pack, I'm pretty sure. What you can tell in elite pack is there's like a glow around the unique monster typically. There's like a little bit of a light radius thing going on. There you have it. Found a lot of unique items as well. And just keep in mind that you can crush any terror zone, especially with the help of Bone Break. Especially if you really don't like this physical immunes, lowering your DPS significantly. The truth is, this build is remarkably simple. Yeah. Gets the job done. So if you ever want to magic find like a pro and a Necromancer, Necromancer is your favorite class, this is how to do it. I mean, I would definitely say, you know, Sorceresses and the Berserk Barbarian are probably overall going to be a bit more efficient in terms of elite sniping and whatnot. The other thing is, if you already have a Necromancer you like to play for party play, let's say like a Summoner or a Poison Necromancer, it's pretty easy to convert it to one of these. Oh, you don't even have to use a respec token in a lot of cases. You just gotta put on the right gear. Might have to. And then you can just solo MF like a boss. Find UV items. Some monsters have a lot of physical res. It might take a little bit longer to kill. Oops, our bow ran out. That's not good.
I am overburdened.
Yeah, you don't want that to happen. Yeah, see, if you want to kill like Spectre minions, much better off using Bone Break. But you can see, even without Bone Break, and then P1, it's fine. If this is P3, that would be a bit of a problem. I can already tell you, even without showing you. I'll already tell you how that works. We've been around the block a few times. Alright, here we go. Alright. Well, of course, there's plenty of other stuff you can look into, but that's it. The Mardi Gras. The Bomber Necro. The Bomber-only Necro. Yeah. There's farmers only. Now there's it's all kinds of dating sites, but this guy is corpse explosion only. This is the Mercenary corpse explosion build. Every Necromancer uses corpse explosion, but most don't have a crazy powerful mercenary like this to help get that initial kill instantaneously. He's a beast, of course, and he doesn't even need any items to actually make it happen. Crazy stuff. I'd say overall he's a B tier build, B tier elite sniper, very solid build. Definitely check him out soon. Of course, we'll have the full guide here at Maxroll, and we'll have the chapters so you guys can check out various parts of this guide. Remember to check out my other guides here and on maxroll.gg as well. Anyway, until the next guide, which we'll be making plenty of before the Ladder 3 reset, which is likely going to be mid-late February. So February 16th or the 23rd is the word on the street, but no official date for now. Anyways, I will see you guys next time. Dark Humility. Over and out. Let's get it.